Welcome back to another episode of Business Talks. Happy Sunday, everyone. We have a lot of stuff I want to talk about today. We are going to talk about the border crisis. We're going to discuss that, how Mexico actually made an agreement with the US to potentially send or deport people back that's waiting to come across here. So we'll discuss more in detail about that. Also, we're going to discuss the education system in the US, and we are going to talk about the UAW if we have enough time, and Senator Menendez, because there's some other stuff that came about with him, but we'll talk more about it in detail. Okay, so let's get to our first topic for today. You guys, thank you for joining us. North South is here from Texas. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, type in the chat. Let me know where you are watching me from. Okay, so in this video, it's about the border crisis. Let me see if I can pull it up. Mm. This looks like it's queuing up the wrong stuff. I don't know why it changed it up like that. Let me see if I can find it again. Okay. So once the commercial runs through, hopefully it starts playing. No, it's still on the wrong thing. Or maybe it's not a video for it. This is about the UAW. Anyway, let me just show you this article right here while I try to find the other video. So, where am I at? This is from CNN. It says Mexico makes agreement with U.S. to deport migrants from its border cities as one mayor warns his city. It is at a breaking point. And this stems from migrants crossing the border or illegal residents crossing the border at that El Paso, Texas line. Okay. It says Mexican officials met with the U.S. Custom and Border Protection on Friday in Juarez, Mexico, across the border from El Paso. Following the recent spike of illegal crossing into the U.S. that temporarily closed an international bridge and paused Mexico's main cargo train system. As a part of the agreement, Mexico agreed to depressurize its northern cities, which border the El Paso, San Diego, and Eagle Pass, Texas, where the mayor has declared a state of emergency. They will also implement more than a dozen actions to prevent migrants from risking their lives by using the railway system to reach the U.S. Mexico border, according to Mexico National Migration Institute. Why are they? We already know that they're using the rail car system because we saw a video about that. How about the agreement is not to bring them over here? How about that? It says migrant crossing along the U.S. Mexico border are rising, surpassing 8,600 over a 24-hour period this week, according to Department of Homeland Security. One report said it was 9,600. Some says upward of 10,000. We don't even know. We know it's a lot. They're not going to give us really accurate numbers because they probably don't even know the accurate numbers. Okay, that's up from around 3,500 daily border arrests after the expiration of Title 42 in May. And it triggered new consequences for those who crossed the border illegally. There were more than 8,000 apprehensions on Monday. Are they doing that on a daily basis, though? Are they actually apprehending people? Because it seems to me that they're apprehending them, they're processing them or not, and shipping them to these cities that's up north. It says about 6,500 migrants are in custody in El Paso alone, which only has so many resources, Mayor Oscar Leeser said at a news conference Saturday. And he said they're at their breaking point. They can't take anymore. The shelter, which will operate out of the nation's Tobin Recreation Center, has been prepped over the last couple of weeks. And they're saying that this facility could only hold 400 people. It said one day last week, 11,000 migrants reached the Mexican border with the U.S. Barcena said. I guess he's over the border custom, announcing that Mexican President Andres Manuel Lopez wants to meet U.S. President Joe Biden in Washington in November to discuss migration along with the drug and firearms trafficking. So Mexico plans to take 15 actions and carry out these actions, coordinating some of these actions with the Custom Border Protection, U.S. Custom Border and Protection. And they're trying to manage the influx of migrants in the recent weeks. Okay, so it seems like, okay, they're planning to ship them back, but not really. I think Mexico is just not going to let them cross illegally. That's what it sounds like. They're still going to be coming over here. Let me know what you think. It sounds like they're still going to be coming over here, but they're trying to make it where they won't get hurt. That's what it sounds like to me. And in this report, let me just share this tab with you.
Mexico has made an agreement with the U.S. to help ease the migration crisis on the southern border. Mexican officials agreeing to deport migrants from its border cities and return them to their home countries. Mexico also agreed to take more than a dozen other actions to deter migrants from crossing into the United States. The move comes amid an overwhelming influx of migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border this month. The Defense Department has deployed 800 active service members to also assist in the crisis.
So on that report, it said they're going to deport them. But the other report said, yeah, they might deport them. I guess it all depends on why they're trying to cross the border. So we don't know. We don't know until things shakes out. That's where we're going to put it at, when things shakes out. Now, the interesting thing about the border. Now, I've heard several reasons why the border is being overrun or overwhelmed with people, particularly in Venezuela. You had Joe Behar saying a few weeks ago about the climate crisis. So her claim is reason why people are migrating to Texas or just the U.S. period is because global warming. That's her claim. And it's like, okay, global warming is not, and this is if you believe in global warming. Type in the chat if you believe there's global warming out there. Type in the chat if you believe, or if you believe global warming even exists. So Joe Behar said global warming is the reason why we have an influx of migrants from, I guess, Central Hemisphere, like Venezuela, and that's why they're coming to the US. That's her explanation, not mine. To me, it sounds ludicrous. Now we have AOC. She's saying that it's because of these sanctions, especially why we have an influx of migrants from Venezuela. It's because of the sanctions that Mark Rubio and Donald Trump up gave to Venezuela. So let's listen to AOC.
Need to have comprehensive immigration reform so that we aren't constantly doing this patchwork policy extensions. That has not happened for decades. But additionally, I think we also need to examine the root of this problem, because if we are constantly engaging in foreign policy that drives people to our southern border. In this specific instance, U.S. sanctions that were originally authored by Marco Rubio began and precipitated, certainly took a large part in the driving of populations to our southern border. Shortly after those sanctions, those broad-based sanctions.
You're talking about Venezuela?
Yes. Shortly after those broad-based sanctions were enacted, we started seeing dramatic increases in these populations that were coming to our southern border. And so we have to address the root of these population movements and the migration crisis. And we also have to address the domestic U.S. policy issues when it comes to immigration reform.
But you know, the Maduro government has also been responsible for large parts of that. Are you saying that you want the Biden administration to pull back pressure on him?
I think we need to re-examine the nature of these sanctions. There are sanctions that are very specific. For example, the Magnitsky Act sanctions that do actually focus on the decision makers and people who may be violating norms, practices, civil rights. But broad-based sanctions that punish the overall economy and harm everyday working people that are driving them into the economic and political destitution that force millions of people, both not just to the United States, but even to our regional partners.
So, and she's talking about these sanctions, okay? So Mark Rubio, I believe it was back in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. But to reiterate these sanctions to President Biden, he wrote President Biden warning President against making further concessions to Maduro and the narco regime. Okay. So in this note, it says the Biden administration plans to ease sanctions on Nicolas Maduro narco regime, would allow the United States to purchase oil from Venezuela and help Maduro fund his socialist regime. The announcement followed the administration decision to release Maduro's convicted narco nephew and a partial lifting of sanctions of Venezuela energy industry. Okay. So in this note is that they sent to Joe Biden. It says outlining the dangerous consequences of his administration's recent action towards Venezuela and warning him against making further concessions with Maduro. Specifically, the senators demand that at no point should the administration take any following action: releasing Alex Saab, the financier and the money launderer of Maduro, who was indicted in the United States for multiple counts of money laundering and currently awaiting trial in Southern District of Florida. Lessen any sanctions currently in place for the PDVSA, the state-owned oil company that provides the regime with source of income. Grants of otherwise facilitate the regime access to frozen assets, remove sanctions on individual Venezuelan nationals, remove sanctions on Venezuela's central bank and Venezuela's Economic and Social Development Bank and subsidiaries, allowed transactions to be purchased new debt, remove sanctions against state-owned mining companies, and excludes the interim government from any negotiation process with the Maduro regime. And it says Rubio introduced a bill to ban the United States from importing oil, a petroleum product from Venezuela, and has warned that the president will recognize the Maduro regime after the midterm elections. And it says Rubio will introduce legislation requiring the Senate to provide advice and consent to any agreement that will result in lifting sanctions imposed by the Trump administration and the Maduro regime. And so she's saying because of these sanctions, and we listed these sanctions, I just read them to you, it's causing migrants to come over to the US. And that is not correct. And you notice the interviewer, don't know the lady's name, but the interviewer on this, she recognized, or she made AOC recognize, it's not because of the sanctions. It's all because of this Nicolas Maduro regime. And he's a socialist. Matter of fact, he starved his people out. We saw this one grocery store. Remember, we was talking about Chicago, and Chicago's crazy mayor wants to have a city-owned grocery store. And I said, well, that sounds like communism, socialism. They have this same system. And one reason why I said it's a horrible idea is because you could starve your own people out because they're not doing what you're telling them to do. The government should not control your food. Now, can the government regulate the food? They should regulate the food to make sure people are not producing food in an unsafe manner and poisoning people. I believe that process should be available or held intact. But I do not believe that the government should have the power to purchase and supply your food. So my example, when I pulled up that example, it had Venezuelans in line at a grocery store. They were only open 2 days out of the week. And then you have to bring a birth certificate and your fingerprint to make sure you're purchasing stuff that's within your household. Because they claim that people were selling these goods on the black market. And also, since it was a grocery store that was ran by the government, the prices were set, which is good because you're not able to make a living in Venezuela. You got to depend on the government for everything. So you're only to shop 2 days out of the week. You got to prove who you buying for and this set amount of quantities that you could buy it for, which is really ridiculous. You guys let me know what you think. So AOC thinks, hey, Rubio and Trump caused the influx of migrants from Venezuela. That's incorrect. Venezuela's government caused the influx of migrants over here. And not only, I wish I could find that document where they are actually giving Venezuela money and some other country money for immigration. And they're supposed to be communicating back and forth of their status. So I guess they send over to the Venezuelan government or whoever, hey, we have so many slots over here. Now you could send whoever's next on the list, you could send their visa application has been accepted, you could send them over there. It's supposed to have been a coordinated effort, but that hasn't happened. And we know Biden has the propensity of letting people out for nothing. Like the last deal they made. Biden administration traded 5 of our people for 5 of their people. Let me just pull it up. It was a prisoner swap, and it was for Iran, the Iranian government. Okay, it says 5 U.S. citizens detained by Iran were freed Monday in high-stakes complex diplomatic deal brokered between Islamic Republic of Iran and Biden administration that include the transfer of $6 billion of unfrozen Iranian oil assets, and then the release of 5 Iranians facing charges in a U.S. plane carrying, the Americans touched down in Fort Belvoir, Virginia. So they did this whole prison swap, plus they released $6 billion of assets. But, for some reason, Biden doesn't like even trades. And I'm talking about even trades on our end. We get the short end of the stick. Like Brittany Griner, they traded the merchant of death for Brittany Griner. The guy that pollutes our city with guns, they traded him. They traded him for Brittany Griner, and they thought that was an even trade. And is Brittany Griner a stellar athlete? You guys put it in chat. Brittany Griner, she's a stellar athlete. Was she worth the trade for the merchant of death? And we're talking about you're running on a campaign now to reduce gun violence, and you traded the merchant of death for Brittany Griner. Does that make any sense? So Joe Biden's record shows that he doesn't know how to negotiate, number one. Only thing he does know how to negotiate is his son's business dealings to make money off of that. But for America, he doesn't know how to negotiate. Because for some reason, every time they're behind a negotiation, we get the short end of the stick. Anyway, so AOC thinks the sanctions is the cause of the Venezuelans' influx of Venezuelans coming into the U.S. And that is not. It's because of their government. Their government treats them like crap. That's why they want to come over here. They get free food, free shelter. Everything is for free. They don't have to put in their fingerprint just to buy a thing of diapers. Matter of fact, we gave them free diapers. If they got kids, we gave them free formula, free diapers, all these social programs that we have. They don't need a birth certificate to get food. And they could shop any day out of the week. That's why they're over here, AOC. So anyway, we're going to go to our next topic. I'm not going to beat the dead horse because we are going to continue to talk about it because it's a forever existing problem. It's not going to go away. We're going to always talk about the border crisis. I'm going to get to this UAW. And I don't got a lot of time, you guys, because I got to get these kids ready. Donald Hop, I have my garden and woods out back. I'm good. Grow your own food. I'm with you, Donald. You got to grow your own food. Robert Jordan said Brittany can dunk though. Yeah, that's why you putting the laughy emoji in, because she can't. She travels to make a dunk. And do we call that a dunk, a legitimate dunk, like a man could dunk? She could just do kind of a layup. She don't have that vertical hop to put her hand and hang from the basket. Anyway, Donald Hop, Biden is selling out America, and people are in shock. I don't know why. Why are you in shock? Nellie Mac, they just get that crap taxed out of them. Yeah. And you know what? They're trying to raise taxes in New York. That's one of the things that they're trying to, how they're going to solve their border crisis is to raise taxes. That's one of their, I guess, solutions to their problem. But you can't throw money at the border crisis. You need to just close the border. That's the only way it's going to fix itself. Donald said, I've been telling people that since 1980. And I'm assuming you're talking about Joe Biden. Okay, so our next story, let me change this. Our next story, we are going to discuss this UAW. This was crazy, you guys. Now, I think Ford is pretty much about to close out their negotiation. It looks like they're coming really close to closing a deal with the Ford plant. Um, GM and Stellantis are still kicking cans or kicking tires, I guess. I'm not for sure what's going on. But while this all happened, over the weekend, they're coming close to a deal, at least with Ford. They had some people, of course, you're going to have some people that's kind of mad about what's going on. And they had some people driving by the strike location, and this was in Detroit and Centerline, driving by one of the plants where they were picketing at. And the guy actually got out and tried to fight some people, and he was saying some racial slurs and all that good stuff. So, of course, classic Detroiters, they gave him a beatdown, a UAW beatdown. So let me share this video with you guys.
Protests, and I can see people are still behind you.
I have no idea what this guy was thinking earlier when he rolled up here to several dozen protesters. He had a lady friend in the car, several kids in the back, all of them yelling racial slurs, the B word to the UAW workers behind me here. And then he actually got out of his car, gestured like maybe he had a weapon. And that's when those workers joined in solidarity to find out what was going on.
It's time they get their share like everybody else.
First, on Friday, a visit from the head of the UAW at the Mopar division of Stellantis in Centerline. Then, another visitor.
Yelling racial slurs, calling people the B word and the N word. Started throwing stuff at people. He started throwing objects at people and then reached behind his back like he had something.
And in solidarity, you can see a sea of red going after the guy in neon. Skyfox catching it all. At one point, the rabble-rouser grabs a UAW picket sign to defend himself. Clearly doesn't work. Punches are thrown on both sides. Then a backwards trip from the guy in neon. Maybe a moment of clarity, realizing he's way outnumbered.
And
why she say the moment of clarity? Uh-oh. I shouldn't have backed up. I shouldn't have got out my car. I shouldn't have got out my car.
we got him on his way.
almost not before his lady friend chucked food at the picketers, kids in the back seat mimicking those awful slurs. They drive off before police got there. No arrests.
We not violent, we not looking for none of that, we not instigating no fights. But the man still jumped out his car and attacked us.
A couple middle fingers later in the day, too, but Troy Rollins says 99.9% is this.
Bringing us food, they dropping off water. We got the businesses and stuff in support of us, letting us use their parking.
We just saw one of those deliveries, a big box of Better Made chips. For the most part, people are very kind out here. Lots of support with honking. Now, Centerline Police, they checked in on us and the picketers just a little while ago. They are beefing up patrols. That has really been standard in the jurisdictions where there are picketers. Reporting live in Centerline, Jessica Dupnack, Fox 2 News.
You know his name.
So I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of advice just for self-preservation. When you see people on the picket line, UAW, now we're talking about plant people, period. In these like car plants, they are on a different level. So just for self-preservation. Now, if you work at these tier 2 automotive companies or tier 3 automotive companies, and you mad as hell because they're on strike, because potentially it affects you and maybe they're laying you off or whatever. Don't be the brave person to think that you're going to drive up on these UAW workers and think you're going to call any names. It doesn't matter if it was racial or not. You're not, and then get out your car and proceed to try to fight someone. It's not going to go well for you. It's not. Okay, so don't do it. Just keep the peace. Yes, it's unfortunate that there are on strike, but that's why we have unions. Okay, the unions is supposed to protect the workers. Now, some unions, like, they overreach most of the time, but they're in existence. So, and people that's in the union, they don't play. Okay, so don't do it. Don't do what that guy did. It's not worth it. Okay, so they're saying that with the union, they might reach an agreement with Ford, but Stellantis and GM, they're still dragging their feet. Let me just no, I want to strike. Okay, let me just share you this. This is just reported on Friday. Let me see if we got any other news. This was 2 hours ago. It said UAW strike scrambles political allegiance. Oh, we don't care. We know Joe Biden is saying he's lockstep with the union. We support the union. But Biden, I wish people that's in the union look at Biden's policies. It's going to drive less workforce. And actually, many of those Americans that's in those jobs might lose those jobs. One, because the green energy deal, and then the other being the migration. You have illegal aliens coming in by droves, men. So they're going to be competing for those jobs. And of course, like I said prior, they'll be willing to take lesser pay anyway. And this is all because of Biden's administration. So, the UAW, they do support Biden because they think Joe Biden has their best interests at heart, but it doesn't. Their policy, their long-term policies doesn't. So they can march and campaign and say, oh, yeah, we support the union. But do you really? So I really wish UAW and the people at these plants really open their eyes and really look at the policies that's really affecting them in a negative way. Okay, so anyway, um, nothing to read here. It says between the lines, the labor-related issues in which the UAW leaders hew closer to the Republicans is their skepticism over the government directed push towards electric vehicles. Okay, so they mention it in the article. Electric vehicles requires less labor to produce, and the jobs are predominantly non-union. Ford is already expected to lose billions in their EV business this year. Cox Automotive reported that July that the EV inventory swelled to 103 days of supply in the US, about double that of gas-powered vehicles. And I already told you, gas-powered vehicles is cheaper to produce and also cheaper to acquire, to purchase, because the insurance is cheaper and the actual gas is cheaper. So Joe Biden has this incentive saying, oh, if you purchase a vehicle less than, I think it's $75,000 dollars, it has to be an EV vehicle, they'll give you some type of rebate. But then you got to worry about, okay, you got to get a charging station. I think that costs about $5,000 to hook one up into your house. Then you got to plan your route out. Then you got your insurance. Your insurance is high as hell. So what are you going to do? The backdrop of this strike is over electric vehicles. Republican strategist Brad Todd said, Republican voters and Republican business owners are not on the side of the car company managers teaming up with the government for electrical vehicle mandates and regulation. It's bad. You got plenty of other energy sources or natural energy, and you're trying to cut those businesses off. You're trying to be solely dependent on electric vehicles or electricity. Electricity comes from coal-fired plant. Like 85% of electricity produced is from coal. But you're saying you want to get away from that. So I don't think the thought process is well thought out. You guys let me know if I'm going in the wrong direction. I don't think it's a well thought out plan. I think somebody said, oh, it sounds nice. Let's go to electric vehicles. We're going to save in whatever emissions. But you didn't. Okay, so how are you going to get from point A to point B? How are you going to get from gas-fired vehicles to electrical vehicles? And the cause of producing electricity is coal. Let me know if I'm going in the wrong direction. Anyway, so that's enough about the UAW. UAW and their brawl. Okay, so I gave you 2 advice. Don't do it. Don't pull up like you about to do something, because them people are crazy. These people are crazy. And I'm married to a UAW union person, and he's not that same half of the time either. So let me get to some of your comments. Southern Boy. Biden wants America to go electric vehicles, but China is the biggest electrical vehicles maker, and that will make us more dependent on China. Exactly. And some of the chips in these vehicles is produced in China. Matter of fact, they have that material that they use for the chips is produced in China. So what are we saying here? Some of these batteries, now we do have some battery plants here, but some of these batteries, most of these batteries are produced in China. So I'm kind of confused of where Biden is going with this. Okay. Donald said corrosion ended electric vehicles before in the 20s. I think they addressed that issue with Tesla. But I don't know. Tesla, now I have heard Tesla, some of their vehicles well, they had an overheating problem. I'm not for sure if it was because of the battery or something, connectivity and electrical, whatever. But I know it wasn't overheating. It wouldn't start certain temperatures if it got below certain temperatures. So it was good for California, but like if you were like in the Midwest, they some of the Tesla vehicles had a problem starting. Now, the problem with Biden's plan, you would think that like Tesla, Elon Musk, they have the leading technology in electrical vehicles. He didn't invite Elon Musk to this summit. That the green energy summit or the EV summit that they had about a year ago, he didn't invite Elon Musk. And he's the leader. As a matter of fact, one of the problems with Ford, GM, and Chrysler is the charging station. Now, Tesla, they have, I think they said like 9,800 charging stations throughout the US. So they got to coordinate to see if, their people, whoever has a vehicle other than Tesla can charge it, use their charging station. But I guess it's included in their plan if you buy a Tesla. But where I'm going is with this is like, you think you would, as Tesla, the leader, Elon Musk, the leader of this technology to the summit, and he didn't because he don't like them. Anyway, I think here in Texas, you have to pay an extra $200 to $400 yearly on EV registration. Yeah, and then insurance is high. Robert Jordan said that F1 450 is $100,000. It's really ridiculous. Okay, so you guys, I don't have any more time because I need to really get offline to start cooking this food for my children. But I really appreciate you guys. Thank you for tuning in and joining me for this short time. We're going to talk about some more stuff on tomorrow, so join me live. Tomorrow is Monday, so more likely I will be live around 8 o'clock in the evening. So join me tomorrow, and I am sending all my good to you. Have a great evening.